Watch out if you spray paint that wall. You may be placed under arrest and accidentally start a civil war and release a whole lot of anger against the government. Whoops, that's unfortunate. That happened to teenagers last year in Syria and released a whole lot of pent-up emotion from Syrians everywhere. This is anger in Syria in plain English. How the anger arose. Hostile Tunisian protesters had it with their government and began a movement in the streets protesting their lack of economic opportunity and political freedom. The movement swept across the Middle East and sparked a rebellious feeling that resulted in the Arab Spring. Meanwhile, back in Syria, 15 teenagers were arrested for spray painting political graffiti against the government and were tortured in prison. This outraged people everywhere. People in Dara broke the wall of fear between the people in Syria because they were so angry. Fire! Hooray! Syrians were also angry because they were sick of living in a police state without their proper rights.
What's a police state?
Well, basically, it's a government run by law enforcement. The police are big and scary, and they keep the citizens in line. It's not very fair and consists of unfair laws like arresting without warrants. It's called a state of emergency law. It isn't pretty. In the city of Dara, it got so ugly citizens were killed and injured during one of its protests. In response, 20,000 angry Syrians marched and chanted freedom slogans at 9 funerals in Dara of protesters who died. In April 2011, in an act of peace, President al-Assad abolished the law, unaware of giving Syrians the ability to protest freely.
Wait, what did you mean proper rights?
Let's look to the world stage. Syria is viewed as a state that has horrible human rights issues, including prejudice and laws against women, homosexuals, journalists, and people of different races and religions. Oh, and everyone's angry because freedom of speech is being suppressed. Journalists are being held captive. Would this be tolerated in our country? Huh, no. Al-Assad did not help the growing tension by attempting to justify the crackdown on protesters with this valuable quote. When a surgeon in an operating room cuts and cleans and amputates and the wound heals, do we say to him, your hands are stained with blood, or do we thank him for saving the patient? Excuse me, let's look at that a second. Cutting off someone's limb, like a right arm. So you're taking away someone's rights. It might look bad, but it's okay for keeping the people in order? Alright, you may sit down or actually step down from office because I'm sure there's a whole population in Syria pissed that you're still there. As a side note, let's discuss women's rights. Now, let's look at the education statistic. 68.2% have at least attended and went to partially a high school, which is awesome, but no statistic was found for completing it. Only partial. Enough said. Oh, and as for gay people, well, being gay equals the death penalty. I'm sorry, what? Recap. Syrians want rights. They're mad they don't have anything that they deserve. Boys spray paint wall and they spark anger's release. Al-Assad won't leave office, making people more angry. And there's no freedom of speech, human rights, such as for women, gays, and journalists, and more, etc. Whew. Got that, everybody? Special feature. How not to get arrested in Syria. Number 1. Don't spray paint. Number 2. Don't protest. Number 3, women don't protest for education or jobs. Number 4, don't be gay because we all know it's a choice and you could be executed. Number 5, don't be a journalist and speak your mind about how ridiculous this is. You might be held captive. Have fun in Syria, biddies.